Well, hello and welcome. I'm Marzia Hashimi, and thanks for joining us for another Face-to-Face. Today, very happy to welcome our guest right here in the studios in Tehran, and that would be Ms. Cynthia McKinney, who is joining us. And of course, she's a former Congresswoman in the United States and also a former presidential candidate of the Green Party. Thanks so much for being here. It's great to have you here.
Well, it's a pleasure for me because you have been a voice and a face that I have seen through cyberspace, and now I actually get to be here in the studio with you.
Well, believe me, it's all our pleasure right here to have you. Well, Cynthia, let's start off. You've been here in Iran now for a couple of days with this anti-terrorism seminar. Just a brief explanation about your overall thoughts about that seminar, and we'll go from there.
Well, I think it was a wonderful experience for me. Of course, this is the first time I've ever been to Iran, and there are many perceptions out there, particularly in the United States, about the character of the state of Iran. So I got a chance to see and greet firsthand Iranians in their own setting, in their own homes. And so for me, this has been quite an interesting, not only interesting, but an enlightening experience. The conference itself brought people from all over the world. More than 100 countries were represented. So I was able to network and interact with my sister from Venezuela, my brother from Bolivia, my brothers from Africa. There were people from North America, South America, Asia, you name it, all the four corners of the planet were represented at this conference. And the thing that brought us together was our singular interest in peace and justice.
Now, what you've just talked about is interesting, talking about peace and justice, because a lot of times in the international community, the way the Islamic Republic of Iran is portrayed would probably be the antithesis of that. So tell me about that, the global opinion right now in general, when looking at the Islamic Republic of Iran and, for example, holding a terrorism or anti-terrorism conference. Your take on that?
Well, of course, there are people, particularly in the United States, with which I'm most familiar, who would say how ironic that Tehran would be the sponsor of an anti-terrorism conference, because there are people who say that Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. And yet, even as I was in various airports on my way here and had the opportunity to meet with Iranians who live, diaspora Iranians, it is clear that the people of Iran have one thing in mind, and that is that they are a revolutionary state. And as a revolutionary state, they understand colonialism, neo-colonialism, imperialism. They understand being under the foot of oppression and occupation, even if it's mental occupation, from an outside force or outside power. And that is what centers the resistance. The people who would label these individuals and this state that protects these individuals as terrorist state, generally speaking, are the entities that are promoting the very policies that even I disagree with at home.
Well, let's look at home, as you say, in the United States and what is happening in the political arena these days. There are lots of talks about possibly a lot of Americans are looking at a third party, are looking for an option out of the Republican and the Democratic parties and wanting something different. What do you attribute that to, first of all? And do you think it will happen that a third party or independent parties can really become a voice in the United States?
Well, there is tremendous pressure inside the political process to make sure that the voters stay aligned inside either the Democrat or Republican parties. Why? because both of those parties have been captured by special interests. And those special interests are, quite frankly, the antithesis of the interests of the people. And so therefore, for example, if people in the United States care about education, but unfortunately there's a banker that gets in between the student and the student's ability to go to school, if they care about health care, there's the insurance industry that gets in between the patient and the doctor who is seeking to provide care. And so we have all of these special interests that have positioned themselves in between the political decision makers and the people themselves. The process now is more responsive to those special interests than it is to the values and the wishes of the American people. When the American people then decide that they are sick and tired of this kind of configuration, the only place to go so that one's values have the likelihood or the opportunity to become policy is outside of the corral that has been built for you. And an interesting example is the Tea Party. The people of the Tea Party were originally angry about the direction of their country. And who wouldn't be angry at the direction that the United States has taken now? They initially said that they would vote neither Democrat nor Republican, that they were independent voters. And then what happened? The powers that be sent Sarah Palin in and corralled this group, this nascent group of independent voters, and captured them again for the Republican Party.
So you're saying this is basically how it's done, even if there's an independent voice, then basically that voice is not going to be heard in the way perhaps those individuals, the grassroots movements, wants it to be heard, but basically it's hijacked at the end for a certain agenda, or what? Tell me.
Well, it was definitely hijacked. The whole Tea Party apparatus was hijacked and then corralled back into the Republican Party fold so that these could then stay where the powers that be would like them to be.
So let me say, with you, because you served in the Congress, the U.S. Congress, and obviously you were representing a certain district in Georgia, and I believe that parts of it was a very deprived area. Am I correct? Mm-hmm. So you go there, you have a certain agenda for the people that you want to make their voice heard. Yes. And serve their interests. Are you allowed to actually do that? Tell me about the process itself as far as when serving as a member of Congress.
Well, the district that I initially represented in Congress, I represented so many districts because redistricting was a tool that was used to target me, to eliminate me from the Congress. But the district that initially sent me there was a district that was comprised of rural blacks in the Black Belt of Georgia. These are people who have not had access to equal opportunity at all. And in fact, when I went into that district, I found such poverty that I didn't even know existed in my own country. I had people in my district who did not have running water in their homes. And I'm talking about 1992. I'm talking about a district where the members of the Ku Klux Klan regularly threatened blacks and even threatened my supporters to the extent that they had shots fired at them. I was told that I needed to get out of town before it got dark. I mean, this is pre-civil rights movement type of stuff. And that's the kind of atmosphere that existed. But what we were able to do in the short 4 years that I represented that particular area is that we were able to bring whites to the table. We were able to challenge those practices that were not acceptable. We were able to bring blacks into areas of power that they never never in their wildest dreams thought that they could possess and own. And then the district was dismantled.
Why was that? What does that mean?
The district was challenged in the Supreme Court. And with the assistance of the Anti-Defamation League, the district was dismantled. It generally takes about $250,000 minimum to take a case from filing up to the Supreme Court. And the people who filed the lawsuit to dismantle, they challenged my ability to represent the people of that particular district.
Who were these people?
Well, actually, interestingly, there were 5 white citizens, one of whom had been the white male candidate that I defeated in the Democratic primary. And they were aided and abetted by the Anti-Defamation League. And when the case arrived at the Supreme Court, interestingly, on the same day as an environmental case, the spotted owl case, the Supreme Court decided that the habitat for the spotted owl should be protected, but that the black voters in that district could have no protection. And so the district was dismantled.
Now, let's talk about when you were actually serving, Cynthia. Did you feel that a lot of your programs or what you were trying to get through, that you could actually make a difference? Was there any kind of interference, or were you basically allowed to be the free thinker that you are?